Hey guys, I'm Rich from NeoWin, and today we're unboxing the Motorola Edge Plus. So this is Motorola's first flagship phone since July 2017. That's almost 3 years without a flagship. And in case you're wondering what that looked like, this is the Moto Z2 Force right here. And if you're unfamiliar with the Moto Z lineup, it's very different than what you're about to see today. The idea was modular accessories that you could just snap onto the back here, use these pins on the bottom to connect, so you'd have like a 360-degree camera. There was a battery pack, a speaker, an Alexa speaker. It's a whole bunch of mods that you could use. And the thing is, with the Z3, which was the one that came after this, they made the 5G Moto mod. And the thing about the 5G Moto mod was that the whole idea was to bring 5G to a lower price point. So the Moto Z3 actually had almost identical specs to the Z2 Force, which was a Snapdragon 835 and so on, And then there was the Z4, which had a Snapdragon 600 series chipset. So the flagship lineup had become decidedly mid-range. Now, fast forward to December of 2019, that's when Qualcomm announced the Snapdragon 765 and 865, and Motorola got on stage and said in 2020 they're going to re-enter the flagship space, and here they are. And they deliver on their promises. They have a Snapdragon 765 phone today, that's the Edge, and then a Snapdragon 865 phone today, that's the Edge Plus. Unfortunately, the Edge Plus that I have right here is Verizon exclusive. So if you're not on Verizon, you're going to have to go with the Edge. Now, Snapdragon 765 is pretty capable as far as the chipset goes. The biggest problem as I see it, this thing has 12 gigs of RAM. By the way, they went pretty all out on this. You can see like re-entering the flagship space was not a task that they took lightly. But the regular Edge just has 4 gigs of RAM, which is probably the biggest difference between the two handsets. And also, of course, this one's coming out in May, and then the Edge is coming out. They haven't said. So let's get this open. It's got a 6.7-inch waterfall display. It's an Edge display, as the name implies, and I assume they're planning on sticking with that name, or sticking with that design for a while, because it's in the name. This is called Thunder Gray, this color. There's another one. It's quite nice, by the way. There's another one called Sangria, and obviously that's more of a reddish color. And honestly, I think that's the better looking one. I was hoping that's what I would get, but this one's pretty nice as well, I gotta say. Also in the box, we have some paperwork and such. And of course, a SIM pin. This says read me. I'm going to be a rebel and just, it says read me on there. I'm just going to be a rebel and put it back in. I'm not even going to read it. Not at all. Nope. Also in the box, we've got a USB Type A to Type C cable. And then we have Motorola Turbo Power AC adapter, obviously USB Type A, and it's 18 watts. Now, this does support 18-watt wired charging, 15-watt wireless charging, and then 5-watt power sharing. So you could actually use it to charge another device, even if it'll be pretty slow. The interesting thing, I believe this might actually be Motorola's first phone that even has wireless charging at all. Because obviously the Moto Z series it's too thin. This whole thing, this phone is so flat and thin, it feels like it's meant to have something snapped on the back here. But yeah, there was no wireless charging. This was made of metal. Even by the time they were up to, I think it was the Z4 when they switched to glass, still no wireless charging. Obviously the Moto G series, there was that Moto X4, none of those had wireless charging. So, all right, there we have it, the Motorola Edge Plus. This phone does look beautiful. No visible bezels on the side. It looks awesome. Hole punch cutout in the display. In-display fingerprint sensor. It's so, by the way, super fast. It's so interesting to see these features that we have seen on some other Motorola phones. A lot of those Motorola One phones or something that like the hole punch cutout that was on the Motorola One phone that I reviewed a while back. I think it was called the Action, but it was a lot bigger. And it's fun to see this stuff in an actual flagship from Motorola, because a lot of this stuff simply wasn't around in 2017, the last time they made a flagship. So, a couple things. By the way, about the design, right? See a lot of fingerprints, but this thing is pretty. I love the Motorola logo on the back. I really love that. Like, this is smooth. It looks it looks like it should be kind of etched in there, but this is all under the glass. It's all smooth. Vertical camera housing, which is they're at different heights, which is a little weird. But yeah, 108 megapixel camera. One thing Motorola touted was having the highest resolution camera of any smartphone. And the sensor size is 1/1.33 inches, so it's one of the largest sensors out there. So it does use quad pixel binning for 27 megapixel photos, and of course we have a 3x zoom 8 megapixel lens, and we have a 16 megapixel ultra wide. So nice flagship triple lens combo there. The display, 90 hertz, right? So they have that nice little animation when you unlock it. We'll look at that again. So now that we're seeing a lot of those smoother displays with high refresh rates, seeing those little unlock animations, and I like Motorola's there with the little waves and such. So that's nice. There's just some Verizon notifications, because obviously this is a Verizon phone, and so that means we're going to get Verizon bloatware. But now if we just unlock it, we should see less. But yeah, the reason it's on Verizon is one thing that Motorola really wanted to go with was they want it to be the best at everything. They want the best display, the best camera, and the fastest speed. So one of the speed factors, which again, along with the Snapdragon 865 and 12 gigs of RAM, but also first of all, there's UFS 3.0 storage with turbo, right? So it's going to be one of the fastest storage around, but also 5G. Now, it has a Snapdragon X55 modem, as we've seen from many devices. It supports millimeter wave and sub-6, and the reason that they picked... Well, first of all, Motorola has been on with Verizon for a long time. There's been a lot of Verizon exclusives. The 5G Moto mod was a Verizon exclusive. But the whole reason that it's there is because Verizon does have the fastest 5G. And this can get speeds of up to 4 gigabits per second. And part of the reason for that is because Verizon only has millimeter wave right now, although it's going to have... and if I turn Wi-Fi off here, you see I'm only on 4G because millimeter wave only works outdoors. Verizon is launching a sub-6 network later this year at some point, and this will work on that. And hopefully that will turn to 5G at that point. So that's the story with 5G. Like, really, again, you have to, for millimeter wave to work, you have to be in line of sight with a with a tower. One last thing about the device itself. Let's take a look. Over here we have a nano SIM slot, a USB Type-C port for charging. Again, 18-watt charging. But on the other side, on the top, it has a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. This is very rare, guys. This is like a unicorn. The only other company using putting headphone jacks in flagship phones is LG. So that's kind of a selling point. You could just plug in any pair of headphones that you have, and it works. No one else is using headphones jacks anymore. That's Apple, Samsung, Huawei, Google. The headphone OnePlus. The headphone jack is gone from all flagship phones. Even the Moto Z series didn't have a headphone jack. It was simply too thin. So that could be a real selling point if you want, that convenience. So now we can take a look at some of the software here. Now, Motorola promises a mostly stock experience. That's what they aim for. Now, when they say that, they mean the Android experience, which is, say, this is mostly stock settings in here. Because as far as apps go, this is most certainly... See, Edge Touch just popped up, and we're going to try that in a second. But this is certainly not stock apps. Like Candy Crush Soda, that did not restore from a backup. That is that is something that Verizon put in there. Verizon Cloud, call filter, digital secure. Um, yeah, I'm sure there's no. I mean, just voicemail. There's nothing that starts with Verizon. Word trip, Yahoo News, because remember Yahoo is owned by Verizon now. So there is a lot of bloatware that does come pre-installed, just because this is a Verizon phone, smart family. I don't know if I said that, and yeah, your only option is to get it from Verizon. Disney Plus, I don't think I had that. Game of Thrones Conquest. So it's not just Verizon apps. It is just general bloatware. Bingo, Blitz, all that stuff's going to get uninstalled. I assume that I can uninstall all this junk. Yeah. Yes, I can uninstall it, so that's nice. So we're going to put some work into uninstalling these apps later on. All right, now, all the stuff that Motorola does offer comes through the Moto app. And that's the nice thing about it, because I've always found that the Moto features are pretty well thought out. Ever since the old days of the original Moto X, which was an awesome device back when Google owned Motorola. And remember they had Moto Voice where like you could say okay Moto, and okay Moto X, and say good night, and it would say okay good night, and then it would put your phone in do not disturb until you said good morning, stuff like that. Obviously that feature was kind of killed off at some point to make way for Google Assistant, but yeah, so if we say see what Moto can do, there's Moto Actions, Moto Tips, Moto Display. Moto Display is sort of like an always-on display. It's called Peak Display, where it'll kind of light up your a sort of always-on display once in a while. You could interact with it. You could drag notifications to unlock it, and it'll launch that notification, stuff like that. Moto Game Time. So it's not going to interrupt your games with notifications, which can always be annoying. But what's new for this device is, like I said, Edge Touch and Edge Light. So let's try it. All right, Edge Touch, try it out. Try double tapping on the action bar to get comfortable with the gesture. Okay, there we go. That's it. All right, so we're gonna turn it on. Let's. All right, and then if we Edge Display can't be turned off in this app. Oh, so it's just so the options are only to switch to the last app or turn on and off Edge Display. That's why that wasn't working. So it's not actually showing. Let's see, can I now? All right, so it's not actually showing like a panel of options, which I kind of thought it would, but you can turn the Edge Display on and off. So if you don't like these edges, they did say that they did a lot of work in gesture or in grip detection and touch detection, so that you won't really have a problem holding it like this. But yeah, so you can turn it off. So another thing that you can do, but by the way, all the settings, you go here, there's Moto Display, Moto Actions. Moto Actions is a 3-finger screenshot. That's always useful. I'm going to turn that one on. Jeez, don't need those pop-ups though. Right, so if we just, there we go. Turned it on. I didn't need to try it out, but yeah. But we can go back to Moto Display, and we have Edge Lights. So what that's going to do is basically it'll light up the sides of your display if you get a notification coming in. So that's more interesting. That there's some settings that you could set for it. Show for app notifications, turn lights off for a scheduled period. So you might not want to have it on all the time. And yeah, and that's Edge Lights. All right. That is the Motorola Edge Plus. There's a lot to show just because Motorola hasn't done this before. Whenever I get another new phone, new iPhone, new Samsung Galaxy, Huawei P series, Mate series, the new Pixel, it's easy to say like here's what's new when compared to last year. Like everything is new about this, because last year was 3 years ago, and there's a like this is something that would never be made in 2020. The bezels are too big. There's no wireless charging. There's no in-display fingerprint sensor. There's no hole punch cutout for the front camera. So it's like there's no predecessor to this. I'm really excited to get my hands on the Edge, which is coming later this year, so no one has one just yet. But I'm really excited to try something like this, but unlocked. The really disappointing part is that it has a third of the RAM. That's the biggest problem. This has a 108 megapixel camera. The regular Edge is 64 megapixels. Obviously little lower end chipset, which the Snapdragon 765 is probably going to be fine for just about everybody. And then of course, the Edge is also only sub 6. The Edge Plus is the only one that's going to get you millimeter wave. So this thing does cost $1,000 on Verizon. Again, they are not selling an unlocked model on Motorola.com. In Canada, it's available on I think 4 different carriers, but you have that exclusivity in the United States, which is a troublesome habit of Motorola of going with Verizon as an exclusive partner. And that's a problem with re-entering the flagship field because no one else is doing carrier exclusives anymore. It's not 2007 with the iPhone on AT&T and whenever the original Galaxy S came out. And remember the original Galaxy S, it had different names on every carrier. Like I was on AT&T and I had the Samsung Captivate, which was the Galaxy S. Like carrier exclusives aren't a thing anymore, so it's a real bummer that as a T-Mobile subscriber I can't buy an Edge Plus and just use this. So I will try putting a SIM in there and see if it's locked. And I did try asking if someone buys it from Verizon if they can use it on another carrier, because that's a big deal, But Motorola did a killer job with this. It doesn't feel like there's anything left out, which is what's really impressive to me. I can tell you what people are going to criticize about it, which is one, the 90 hertz display instead of 120. A lot of companies are going with 120. I think 90 hertz is fine. I have the OnePlus 8 and the OnePlus 8 Pro right now, and I can't tell the difference between them. They're both so smooth. I think 90 hertz is fine. But also 18-watt wired charging, which I also think is fine. Other companies like Huawei just put out a phone with 40-watt wired charging and 40-watt wireless charging. And I really think that I said this in a previous video about how I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter to if you tell me, okay, this phone's going to get 50% charge in 30 minutes, and then in the next year you're like, okay, but with this new charger, you get a 50% charge in 26 minutes. I don't care. I think a good 15, 18 watt charger is fine. How often do you really need that fast charge where you get that lightning fast charge? And I'm happy that they finally have wireless charging. And by the way, this has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Another thing that Motorola pointed out is that it has the biggest battery. By the way, when they say the biggest, they don't mean that they're the only one with the one that size. Highest resolution camera, it is the highest resolution camera on a smartphone right now. It's not the only one with a 108 megapixel sensor. Not the only one with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Just no one has one that's bigger. But they're promising 2 days of battery life. All right? On a 5G phone. I'm skeptical. I probably won't be able to test this out on Verizon's 5G because you have to kind of get to Manhattan for that. But millimeter wave, in my experience, really does affect the battery. So I'm not sure how it's going to do on 5G. Of course, you're not going to get 5G when you're indoors. So it might not matter. You're not going to get 5G when it's in your pocket. Because that's the nature of millimeter wave. Millimeter wave can be blocked by a piece of paper, a raindrop, a leaf from a tree. So only when you're holding your phone and you're actually using it. But I have, in my experience with millimeter wave, it does affect the battery when you're using it. So I'm curious if they could really make it last 2 days. But we'll see. Anyway, guys, that's it. I'm Rich from NeoWin. Have a great night.